Hi, I'm Sarah Soule, and I'm a professor of organizational behavior at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. My research and teaching fall in the broad area of organizational and team design and culture. Cloudification has dramatically changed how organizations onboard and train their employees. In 2019, for example, a study that was reported in the Wall Street Journal found that the number of software applications used by large companies had increased by nearly 70% in just 4 years. The average number of applications used by employees now is close to 130 at larger companies. And some 10% of companies now use over 200 software applications. What this means, of course, is that firms now must constantly train and upskill their workforce on a variety of different applications. And this is made even more complicated because of role specialization, such that a worker may not need to use 90% of the functionality of a given application. Add to this that a new generation of workers are entering the workforce and they don't necessarily learn the same way as did an older generation of workers. They want instant videos and targeted how-to instructions on specific topics rather than hours of training on functions they may never ever use. Stated really simply, our traditional way of training and developing employees isn't working any longer. And we might expect that these trends will continue as our reliance on more and more specialized applications and functions within these applications proliferates. These challenges have all been amplified by the pandemic and the move to hybrid and remote work. I think there are four trends that are worth highlighting here. First and most obvious, many people are still working remotely or trying to navigate this new experiment in hybrid work. What this means is that training and upskilling is largely being done remotely. Thus, we need to figure out ways to do this efficiently because we're spending so many hours on video conference calls. The so-called Zoom fatigue is real, as some of my colleagues at Stanford have shown. So figuring out ways to minimize video conferences and long trainings is really a necessity for organizations. Second, we know that the pandemic has increased worker flexibility in terms of when hours are being worked. This means that a worker may be using an application at off hours and they may run into a problem with which they need help. If their coworkers or subject matter experts aren't online at that time, they're going to be stuck. So the pandemic has necessitated on-demand, real-time help and coaching. Third, and the New York Times just recently published a piece about this, workers who were onboarded during the pandemic may have less attachment to their companies and may be more likely to leave for other opportunities. As we know, turnover costs organization a lot. So anything we can do to increase the attachment people feel to their organizations is always critical, but more so now that people aren't necessarily co-located. So online communities of practice may be one way to increase worker attachment to their organizations. Finally, there's some evidence that the pandemic has oddly shrunk our workplace networks. That is, while we may be meeting more and more frequently and working more and more hours, as the research has shown, the number of people that we meet with and interact may be shrinking. This means that we may be more siloed than we were prior to the pandemic. If this preliminary evidence is accurate, it may be that the knowledge spillovers between silos in organizations is less likely to occur or less likely to occur easily. So this is really a huge challenge for learning and development. When we aren't co-located, how might we ensure that knowledge is transferred across silos in an organization? There are a few onboarding practices that I have seen that organizations adopt that seem to be working pretty well. First, bite-sized information seems key. Onboarding can be such an overwhelming experience, and people need small amounts of information spread over a longer period of time to really integrate that information. Second, organizations need ways to forge connections between employees and the organization. This is so essential to build the culture that so much of us want in our organizations. So smart organizations recognize that the onboarding process is as much about building community as it is about imparting the technical skills needed for a role and information. Finally, and related to organizational connections, making sure that knowledge flows throughout the organization through sharing of information is something that successful organizations do really well. Guide has enormous potential to meet the changing learning and development needs for at least three reasons. First, the on-demand tutorials mean that people working off hours or in different time zones can get their questions answered in the moment when they need that information the most. Second, because users can create shorter, targeted videos, there will be a great appeal to a new generation of employees, as well as this will minimize long trainings with a lot of superfluous information. To the extent that more and more of our trainings will be virtual, this is key. Finally, the potential of creating communities of practice on the platform strikes me as one way to keep employees engaged and connected to their organizations. This is an important step in reducing turnover and building organizational and team culture. As well, and very much related to this, the creation and sharing of knowledge across organizational silos gives us an enormous potential to break down any of the barriers within organizations to allow for culture to be built. Let me mention just two trends that I think might be important to the learning and development space. First, we know that the wisdom of the crowd can be incredibly useful. Where did we go when we needed to learn to bake bread or cook something during the pandemic? We searched for videos online. Then think about how many cooking tutorial videos went viral during the pandemic. It is now the first place to go when we need advice on anything we're doing. And this is true at work too. Second, we need to do this increasingly on our mobile phones. This is because everybody now wants to be able to consume video on their phones, and having the ability to do this on our mobile devices is going to be critical moving forward.